Hi guys, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. I really hope you're doing well. T here of Bed Crime Stories podcast. 19-year-old farmer Dylan Rounds has been missing now for nearly 2.5 months. So it's no wonder that all of us who are covering the case had our hearts go into overdrive yesterday when we counted 11 law enforcement vehicles stirring up the dust as they sped down remote desert roads out in Montello, Nevada. We were able to watch this because Lance Kelly of Earthworm Entertainment, along with Ty Corbin, had a camera at the ready. According to Lance Kelly, they received a tip 5 minutes before they filmed that the FBI was at the post office in Montello. Under the shade of a canopy, Kelly and Corbin watched the events go down in real time. Said Corbin, "We didn't want to get too close and interfere with their search," end quote. So many vehicles headed in the same direction signal that something big and official was about to occur. Would this be the day that Dylan Rounds would be found? A 6-hour-long search by Elko County Sheriff's Office and the FBI ensued at 59-year-old Jim Brenner's own remote property in the Montello Desert. You may recall that Jim Brenner was named a suspect in the Dylan Rounds case just about a month ago, and he's currently at the Weber County Jail on charges of being a felon in possession of a firearm. The 11 vehicles held 30-something law enforcement officials as well as cadaver dogs. By noon, news of the search went viral on social media. Law enforcement was there to scour the sloped property where all that remains of Brenner's life there are the blackened, charred remnants of his former trailer. The infamous trailer that exploded when Brenner left gas cans inside while his wood-burning stove was lit. He likely put the cans inside to prevent thieves from stealing them. It's not uncommon in that neck of the woods, where gas is hard to come by, for people with sticky fingers to nab other people's supply. Brenner was away from the trailer when the explosion occurred. If Brenner hadn't been away at that moment, we may not be here talking about the 19-year-old missing farmer. Some people were reporting yesterday that the search was on a separate lot right next to Brenner's land, but a subscriber I have who lives in the area and who has a straight view from a home office through to the property said that if law enforcement was on an adjacent lot, then they were footsteps away from Brenner's property. Note that this was not at the grain shed property in Lucin, just in case you're unsure or confused about it. No, this is land that Brenner apparently owns. Why he doesn't live there is anyone's guess. I suspect his land out there doesn't have access to electricity or water. The grain shed property does have those things from what I understand. Also, the grain shed property was perhaps closer to the farm jobs that Brenner was able to land and get paid for despite being a convicted felon with a violent criminal history. Yesterday's search came about after Elko County presented the court with an affidavit for probable cause to obtain a search warrant for Brenner's property. They submitted that affidavit on Friday, August 12th, but that original affidavit was denied. Law enforcement then quickly went back to the tables, did additional research, and came back with a document that convinced the judge that they did indeed have probable cause to search number one suspect Jim Brenner's property. As soon as the judge granted the search warrant, law enforcement headed out to Montello. The deflating news about the search is that, according to Dylan's mother, Candace Cooley, nothing was found. Cooley optimistically declared that the search was not a waste of time, though, because it's now yet another suspicious area that can be checked off the search list. Cooley said of this search, "I know Elko County is showing up in full force. They were not going to leave any stone unturned. So I am sure they got their dogs out there. They are going to go out there and wipe that place clean. Either have more questions or have evidence, or we can wipe it off our slate." End quote. And it was later confirmed that cadaver dogs were indeed used. Lance Kelly also stated that he and his wife Kimber and Ty Corbin had tipped the FBI off about something odd at Brenner's property. Said Kelly, "What I saw there at Brenner's property when we showed up was the burnt frame of his trailer. There was clearly an explosion. We walked a little bit further and my wife noticed 2 shovels, one of them sticking straight up out of the ground, and next to the shovels were 2 depressions of dirt where someone had clearly been digging and had filled them back in, and near one of the depressions was a pickaxe." End quote. So it may actually have been their tip that led to the probable cause that in turn led to the granting of the search warrant. When Candace Cooley announced that nothing was discovered, I personally felt both disappointed and relieved. It's an odd cocktail of emotions that comes out of these sudden official searches. You want the missing person to be found, but then again, you don't want them found if it means that they're deceased, even if your brain has been telling you that it's been too long for that person to still be breathing and well. I've had that same rush of weird emotions in the Summer Wells case, when you're really invested in a case and have formed some type of attachment to the missing person. It makes your heart sink. But I found hope later in the day when watching Chris of the Mob Crew with a retired detective named Steve bring up images of large tracks from what appears to be a piece of heavy equipment with 8 tracks out in the Lucin Desert near where Dylan's phone last pinged. Chris noticed the tracks in drone footage that he took of the desert in Lucin 8 days after Dylan went missing. It was only later, after scouring the footage, that Chris noticed the tracks in an odd place. The tracks run over the shrub brush to the side of a ravine. You'd think someone operating what looks to be a large bobcat machine would run over the flat middle part of the ravine, or better still, be up on an actual road or path. Why was someone running the bobcat, or whatever machine it was, over the brush? Was it to obscure the tracks in the shrubs? It certainly looks like it. Note that these tracks go a long way down the ravine. Chris couldn't capture the entire path of the tracks because his drone battery ran out. According to Steve, the tracks look to have been made after all the rain that fell on Saturday afternoon and Sunday. In addition to the large 8-track markings, there were tracks from a 4-wheeler. If I heard them right, the 4-wheeler tracks were inside the space between the 2 sides of the bobcat tracks. What in the world is that about? Did someone come out after the bobcat with a 4-wheeler to drive over those tracks to try and make them melt into the desert sand? Before you ask, let me say this. Yes, Chris has shared all this drone footage with the FBI. To me, this seems like a very smart place to look for Dylan. It's near where his phone last pinged, and I can't think of a good reason why a large bobcat would be out in a ravine in the desert, driving over brush instead of the flat land. Let's hope that searchers, either official searchers from law enforcement or citizen searchers who know what they're doing, never give up until Dylan is found. I know the desert is vast. I live in a desert, but I believe it's possible to slowly do grid searches very carefully, very meticulously, and keep at it until Dylan is found. Until the next time on Bed Crime Stories. Now do me a favor, hit that like button, and if you want to support my channel, you can do so with a super thanks right down in the comments.